Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you'll see a little link down below. You can click on it. You'll end up in Zoom. Then you'll see another link down below, and you'll click on that. And you'll end up in Mukana. And that's where you become the producer or one of the producers, part of our producer core. Basically, this show is up to you. Well, what we talk about, what we argue about, what we discuss is all based on what the producers ask and what you vote on. It's really important to also vote on the questions if you're in Mukana, because that really sets the order. We spend more time talking at the top of the hour about your questions than at the bottom of the hour. So your voting actually makes a huge difference in how we manage the show. If you think that you can answer the questions, and it's just such a great way to really become part of the community. If you've been doing this for a while, if you have things that you can add, and it doesn't have to be just video, it might be IT, it might be visual effects, it might be other things. What this depends on more than any other show in the world is that smart folks join the panel with their little understanding of what they know, and add that one answer or that two answer or the three answers in a day or even a week. And it'd be great to have you here, and you become really more and more part of that community. So to do that, you can get here as early as 6 o'clock if you want to just test your system. And you need to be here by 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to actually do the mic check. That way we can make sure that everyone's really ready for the show. First hour is general questions. Any question you have about media production or virtual production is game. Second hour is usually something that we want to spend a little bit more time on, and we are really excited to talk today about Streamweaver. Streamweaver, we have Andy Carluccio, and there we go. Andy Carluccio is going to be here along with Jonathan Cocatello, and they are from Liminal, and they're going to be talking about Streamweaver, and we're super excited. I know. Here's the deal. I talked to Andy yesterday. Andy's super excited. Victor's super excited. Somebody's super excited about something, so I'm just excited to see what they're excited about. That's all I have to say. So anyway, it's going to be a good second hour. Saturday is the long day. It's become very long. So we're going to start with a general Q&A. Then we have education for 2 hours from 8 to 10. At 10 o'clock, we've got Nick Justishin from Drexel University continuing our discussion about Unreal. At noon, we are going to do a test recipe, and I missed getting it updated this morning by literally 10 seconds. So I'll send out an email, or we'll put it in Discord, the recipes. But we'll have a test recipe for week 5 of Mad in the Kitchen that we're all going to kind of try to go through it. It gives me a chance to cook too, so I'll cook with all of you for my kitchen at noon, and that's testing a recipe to see how it works and see what we need to make sure we annotate and so on and so forth. So we'll be doing that at noon. And then at 5 o'clock, we actually have Man in the Kitchen. So the cool thing about that, if you haven't heard me talk about it, is that you can watch us cook. You can actually cook along with us, but you can also watch the production and listen to the comms. And the comms open at 3 o'clock, so you can hear us just getting set up and talking among different sites and so on and so forth. And so it's really fun. And then after the show, we talk more, because that's what we do here. Talk. We talk a lot. Anyway, so that's what's coming up. Bill, let's jump into the questions.
Great. Tony Mobley starts us off from the panel, often on the panel, not today, from Newman, Georgia, and said, "Did Office Hours sing Happy Birthday to Guy yesterday? I was in and out."
No,
I think I'm going through a Zoom storm. I don't know what's going on here. I think it's a little glitchy.
Guy skipped out.
Birthday.
Wait. Okay. Guy skipped out, thinking he was going to get out of it, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So we're going to have to do it late. Okay, everybody ready?
Me.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Guy. Happy birthday to you.
Hold it, JJ. Hold it. Hold that sound, JJ.
Yeah, you're not going to get away that easy. So anyway, happy
It's
birthday,
getting
Guy.
better, though.
Yeah, we're starting to get into.
Could we have gotten worse?
Yeah, exactly. It'd be really funny if it turns out we like a year from now we all end up in harmonies and all this other stuff without any software. That would be amazing. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the next question.
Okay, comes from the 7th Scroll in Brooklyn, New York, and said, "Hey guys, with the iPad Pro now being released, would you recommend it over the Wacom One or Telestrations?" Oh, it's Mike and Joe from Brooklyn. He put that in the end.
Yeah, so we don't know yet. I ordered mine. it was a little rough this morning. I think those of us who were trying to order, it was like, it's in the bag, it's not in the bag, it's in the bag, it's not in the bag. You can order it. No, it's not here anymore. You know, like, it was very confusing for a couple minutes as we tried to order it. It sounds like a lot of us will have them near the end of the month, and then we'll start to be able to test it. The big question will be, and I don't think we're going to know this until after WWDC, is what kind of video input we can have with the Wacom tablet. That's going to make a big difference. Using that USB-C connection or Thunderbolt connection, can we get enough I/O in and out to make that work? But so far, we'd probably still stick with the Wacom tablet at the moment. But hopefully that'll improve. And that's if you want to see what you're drawing. If you want to just draw, then the current iPad works great. Next question.
Comes from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas, and he says, with the right adapters, is it possible to use an external webcam like a Brio or a C920 on an iOS or Android device, either with Zoom or with an NDI cam link over the network, thinking of using older model iPhones as kind of kit glue?
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Not impossible, I suppose, depending upon exactly which webcam you're talking about, but over the network is my real disconnect. Yes, you can, with an iPad Pro, you can use USB-C and anything that is compliant, and I mean class compliant with no drivers. You absolutely can do that, but just understand that it's not really the way it's designed, so be very careful. And over the network is its own ball of wax.
Yeah. I think that kind of cobbling together might be possible. It might not be comfortable. Next question.
Tony Mobley, our friend in Newman, Georgia, says, has anyone tried the new Filmic Pro updates? And if so, what are your thoughts?
I missed it. Anybody download it? What's new? Do we know what's new in the update? It must have just come out.
It's brand new. It's like this morning, brand new.
Oh. So yeah, we don't. Let's see here if we can jump into it. Yeah, it's hard. You got to give us a couple days. But maybe not. Maybe we have to just get better about keeping up with the apps that we've had on the show. I'm just looking for the. It doesn't say it needs to be updated. Maybe it automatically updated. What's new? It says it's a major update. Lens pickers, advanced CMS support for file naming. Well, it looks like lens picker and lens picker as far as equivalence. So that could be kind of interesting. Yeah, we haven't played with it yet, but it looks cool. Next question.
Craig Kadoki of Toronto, Canada says, now that we've had a chance to play with the Apple TV screen calibration, thoughts on when Apple will add this to iOS for external screens and projectors on Macs?
Well, yeah, go ahead, Jason.
I sincerely doubt it. I mean, at the end of the day, Apple is all about the shock and awe. I mean, I can't say it's impossible, but I wouldn't hold my breath. They might do it, they might not.
I think any place that Apple owns the device that's generating the video signal and you have an iPhone, I think they could definitely do it. Projectors
they could.
Is hard.
It's just a matter of, is this going to be one of these gimmicks that are only like, for the Apple TV?
I think it would make sense though if you're trying to if you go past the gimmick part and you just want to make sure that people have an accurate display or more accurate display. Projectors is hard because your phone's in the way, but when you deal with an external monitor, it seems like it would be an easy add on Apple's side. Charles, and then Craig.
Yeah, I do believe they have everything in place to do it, especially like Alex just mentioned, if they do it on their own devices, their own screens, they control the whole pipeline. I think since most professionals that are creatives tend to buy Apple products, I think their need to have something that is as accurate as possible, that's the price that you pay to get an Apple product. You want things to look a certain way. I think they have that capability. I wouldn't be surprised if they do it, and I would actually welcome it. I'm not sure how they would do it for third-party monitors like BenQ or...
But again, what they're doing, I think, and I don't know for sure, but the impression I have is they're basically building some version of a LUT where they're basically, it doesn't matter what the monitor's set to, because what it's doing is it's saying, I'm showing the phone colors. Here's a color. So when you do this, I did this a couple days ago, on your Apple TV, you get a little window, and then it just starts changing. It shows you the primary colors, and then it starts showing a series of grays and whites that it's kind of looking at, and then it makes a nice little, and now your monitor looks darker. So like so far, every time we've done it, everyone has noticed like got a little darker. So but more accurate. I definitely noticed that the colors looked a little richer and a little bit more what I expected them to be when I after I ran it on my monitor. So I don't think it cares what the end monitor is. That's the magic, is that if you can control both ends, what's generating the video signal and what's reading the video signal, you can sync almost anything, to it. Now, I don't think it's going to be as accurate as something like a Spider, that you drop on or something more. But I think that for the average person who has the phone and has a Mac, it could be useful for them if they're not going to go down the path of a professional calibration tool. Craig?
Yeah, that's what I was sort of hoping, and I think with what Apple's done in the past with the sort of basic calibration tools that they put into the OS, where you just try to match up pictures and gradient lines and stuff, I thought this would be a no-brainer. I'm actually a little bit surprised it hasn't happened yet, but I think it's something we should be hopefully seeing soon.
Yep. So we'll see. Obviously. WWDC is not too far away. So I think I doubt we would see anything new until then. Next question.
Mark Harder in Brooklyn, New York says, has anyone had a chance to use OctaQ? Used it yesterday and he found it pretty flawless. I think it looks like that. I'm not sure. It looks like a slide control clicker thing.
No, but it looks cool. so I think that we'll ask us in a little bit. I definitely think I'm gonna do anything that's like that kind of solution is usually something that we're user interested in. I think a lot of us, though, I think it depends on whether this does something that what I'd want to know is what does it do that is different than the remote that already exists for Keynote. As an Apple user, I'm now as someone else. I mean, I think if you're using PowerPoint, if you're using slides, if you're using a PC or Android, then this might make sense. On the Apple side, just remember that Apple makes a thing called Remote that controls Keynote on your computer from your phone. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I believe it says on the website that you can do multiple controllers for multiple machines. So that would probably be the biggest feature. Is I could start on one machine, go to another machine. Somebody else could be controlling the slides at one point, so you could do quick switches.
I always see that kind of stuff as a speaker, and I always go, I don't know how I would use that because it's hard enough to remember to use the clicker in the first place. Like to in live in front of people be switching stuff back and forth. It seems like a hard thing, but we'll take a look at it. It's interesting. Next question.
Our friend Doug Ferguson from Fort Wayne, Indiana says, when using a CSV or comma-separated value text file to pre-assign Zoom breakout rooms, it did not create all the rooms from the file. Is this a bug or is there a room limit?
Sounds like a second hour to me.
It's probably a whole second hour for breakout rooms because half the stuff works for me and half of it doesn't.
I know that there is a 200 attendee limit, but what happened yesterday when I created it, I saw that it didn't create the last two rooms. There was 28 rooms, and I manually added those two rooms in and saved it. And then yesterday, of course, when the meeting's on,
the one thing I will say with you saw Andy knew what the answer was, and as soon as you said I manually added two rooms in, everyone, ooh, no, you stepped off.
Oh, this is after the after the
go back to the Yellow Brick Road.
Yeah,
go back
after
to the
import, I added the two in, and then
and then they don't see them, do they?
And then the pre-assigned thing, I don't know if that's working or not, because I mean, I had the entire list, all the emails, and I think of the 300 people, half of them didn't get to the rooms. And oh my gosh, it was just click, 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 click for the next 10 minutes. And breakout rooms are the devil.
I've never seen the pre-assigned work.
Yeah, we've had a lot of trouble with the pre-assigned to the point where, I mean, the person that has it figured out, I think the best is Grant. But what he's doing is his pre-assigned is not using any of the to my knowledge, Grant may correct me, maybe changed it, but he kind of just ignores all those rules, and he's using a series of API calls to basically change your name. His web page, when you go in and register, he's giving you a code. He's putting in something in your name, and then he's searching by that, and then he's putting you in. But it's all his API calls. It's not using Zoom's infrastructure at all. That's the only way I've seen it work. One of the big arguments that we make with rooms is why we start pre-shows. Like we open the doors at a half an hour before, or open the doors an hour before, is so that we're not doing something really fast right before a show. Is we give people a reason, and think about actually designing the show with people are going to come in and mill about, and then they're going to slowly get pulled into where they're at, and they're going to mill about some more, and then they're going to go into the show. I think a lot of times one of the things that we're seeing in general with a virtual design is they don't take into account, most of us who have done events, we open the building an hour before, at least, if not 2 hours before. People come in, they're talking amongst themselves and all having a good time, and then they all go into where they need to go. There's a kind of a process, and I don't know about yours, but I'm just saying that what we notice a lot is there's a process of, we're going to open the webinar 2 minutes before the webinar starts, or a room like 10 minutes before, especially with hundreds of people. You wouldn't do that in the physical world. Like you would give people plenty of time to, we would definitely, I know I ran physical events for years with about 200 people every event. And, the building was open, people come in anytime. The room was open 20 minutes ahead of time to give people time to come in. And then we tightened everything down 2 minutes before to make sure they're all in their seats. So I think that we want to, I bring that to all of our event production as well. And I open everything up early to make sure that we have plenty of time to sort people. Go ahead, Doug, and then Jeffrey.
Yeah, we did have a half hour before
great.
the actual event started, and we had a team of 4 people that
clicking.
Well, we were renaming them first because this was specific people in specific rooms. It wasn't a random thing. So we were renaming people RM1 name, RM7 name. And so that process, and there was like a 22-minute video that started the main meeting where everybody was there. So we had a half hour ahead and the 22-minute video, and we still didn't have enough time to rename that many people.
And why were you, in renaming people like that would be, now, is that something that Zoom OSC could just burn through? Yeah. Andy's like, that's a find and replace in Zoom OSC. Like you just hit a button and it just goes add room 1 to the beginning of the name.
Should have had you on, Andy.
That's like a button, right? I mean, I don't know, Andy, you can let me know if that's.
Yeah, so there's 2 things there. So the renaming, we can make that a lot faster for you. We can figure out how to basically, as people are joining, you can get a little prompt and you can dial it in there, or you can select batches and do things there, or just like add a suffix to everybody's name if it shows up, and then you can just rename as a single bulk action. The other thing we could do is with the breakout rooms, we have new commands coming. They're still in beta yet. But what we're going to have is the ability to create breakout rooms and close them and move people to them and move them between them. So at that point, you won't have to think about the pre-registration anymore or any of that stuff. You'll just create whatever policy you want to manage your breakout rooms, turn it on, and then let Zoom OSC do the rest for you. So it's still in beta, so I don't know if it's show ready yet, but as soon as I have something ready for you, Doug, I'll ping you and we'll get a test.
Good, Jeffrey.
And there is a limit of 200 on there. But the other thing that I always do with after I'm done putting all my stuff together is to actually just take it to just the basic of text files. Make sure there's not an errant comma just sitting, or tab or colon, semicolon sitting somewhere that could mess everything up.
And what were the hard reasons to put people in specific rooms? I'm always curious because I never do that. I'm just curious.
Well, this was a specific group that in their live world that they would buy, a sponsor would buy a table, and people would no, I want to be at that table because this person's going to be speaking at that table. So that was the whole premise of this event, that people picked which room they wanted to be in. So that was really specific. And then, when the 2 rooms didn't get created, it's like, okay, what do we do with these 2 tables? Like we had to just shove them in table 1. Like, hey, guess what? Table 1 just got a lot bigger. But
You know, and one of the things that I would think about there, I mean, my approach to that would probably be that in the real world, you would just you would tell people where their tables were and let them go there. And if they went to the wrong one, you'd go, "Hey, you're in the wrong table." Have somebody at the table just going,
I
you don't
did
belong
offer
here."
that suggestion because I know that setting is, let people pick. The client didn't want to let
Sure.
them have
I'm just
that
saying.
much power.
Yeah, exactly. But they have that much power in the real world. Like in the physical one, they had that much power. They could walk and sit down at the wrong table. It would just be socially awkward. That socially awkward is pretty useful. Go ahead, Chris.
I think one of the things that we continually need to remind ourselves, and there's got to be a term for this. I'm going to call it like genius syndrome or expert syndrome. There are a lot of things, Alex, that we think are insanely easy and are incredibly difficult for the lay people.
Yep.
We'll just change rooms. I don't know how to do that. I just downloaded this morning.
Well,
what is this Zoom thing?
So again, and this underlines the need for doing multiple events. So anytime at this point, every time someone wants to do a big conference a couple months away and they talk to me, I'm like, okay, what are the events we're going to do before the conference? And they don't have to be expensive and they don't have to be big. They can be, I was like, I do an event every day, and I was like, and it's not very expensive, for me to do that. And think about how we can have a discussion. And the reason we want to do that when I talk to clients is I say the reason that we want to do that is we want to train our audience to understand how the system's going to work. And we're going to get through them installing Zoom, and we're going to get through going through into rooms. And we're going to, so that when you do it in the conference, you're basically, and the thing that COVID has made it easier to say is we're flattening the curve. Like we're just flattening the curve over a long period of time, because what we want to do is make sure that there's still going to be 20% that are very confused, but it's no longer 80% that are confused half an hour before your show, and so we push towards multiple events, again, that usually don't cost any more than the show would have cost, because it's just like simple conversations. Go ahead, Chris, and then Jason, real quick.
Does that turn into a cost center for you? Can you charge for some of those pre-events? A nominal. We
charge
fee?
if they want us to manage it. Sure, yeah, like we definitely can. Add more to it. Usually, it's. We usually package it into the whole thing, and we usually don't have that much difference in cost, because it costs us almost nothing to do it, and so to manage it, if we're not turning the whole view system on, like our hardware, if we're just doing a Zoom and a discussion and helping out, it's a relatively inexpensive cost compared to the size of the events that we normally work on. So it's like almost noise, to do 6 events before a big event to prep things out. So
is that what you call your system? The view system?
View system, yeah.
Nice. Got an R after that.
Yeah. Jason?
Fenwick, what you're talking about is called the curse of knowledge, and it's one of the most repeatable phenomenons in psychology. Basically, it's impossible to act like you don't know something if you are very familiar with it.
Yeah, and we are very familiar with Zoom, and most people, many people are not.
When people say I do this all the time, I do this all the time, and they tell you that they can't do something. All I can think about is Man on Fire, with Denzel Washington, where everyone keeps on saying that they're a professional, and he goes and he's tapping on this guy's head, just going, everybody keeps on telling me that. They keep on telling me that I'm a professional. Like he goes, and you're just like, you're not. All right, next question.
Comes from Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas, and Rupert says meetup.com has an article on, quote, how to host an online event. It suggests using Zoom, Google Hangouts, or Jitsi, Jitsi. Anyone know anything about Jitsi?
Jitsi is the open source platform. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, so it is. There's another one of those WebRTC skins, of which we've seen many of them. We were really rooting for it for quite a while. We really wanted to use it for some events, but the problems we had, and mind you, this is in the summer of last year, so things may have changed, but we had a lot of issues that are sort of the archetypical WebRTC issues with it, where we couldn't find the right camera in browser, or we could get most people connected, but not everybody connected, or when we got in, the interface wouldn't refresh and do, a specific thing that we were trying to do, or the mobile client wouldn't work. So it was really neat when it was working, but it was sort of it's the same story as most WebRTC clients these days.
WebRTC, I mean, has some pretty heavy flaws if you want to go past anything other than people open their computer and it works. Like as soon as if you just open the computer and you're using the built-in mic with the built-in camera, and you're at home with a simple router, WebRTC works great, and you go, okay, and that's 90% of the folks, but that last 10% is rough, and that's where Zoom kind of sets itself apart. I think if you're trying to play with something and you're a coder, Jitsi makes a lot of sense, but outside of that, I wouldn't bother. Next question. And I was just on a Hangout call this morning or Meet. I wouldn't bother with that either. Next question.
Comes from Aaron Giancarlo, and he's in the lovely town of Flagstaff, Arizona, looking for video scopes to use with Vmix on a green screen studio setup. Not sure what is best for a medium-sized budget. What does the panel suggest?
Go ahead, Charles.
I'm using Omniscopes. Those for the price, they're about $400, $99 to renew.
What? 3 licenses. It comes with 3
Yes.
licenses. I only know because I just bought it.
So they're really, really nice. I have it attached to my Resolve, but you can do some interesting things. For example, and I'm sure my sync is going to go off, but I can set it to screen capture. So now I have scopes reading whatever's happening in Zoom, right? So I can tell that Alex is right in the ballpark, and so is Mickey and Steven. I think your forehead is a little hot, and I can tell that from the false color. I can look at the CIE scopes. I can look at the waveform, the parades, and it's actually, for the price, it's really, really nice. And you could attach it to many things, which is one of the few things. Well, one thing I would suggest, run it on a separate machine and then just feed it whatever you want to feed it.
Yeah, I have mine on a Mac Mini that's sitting here, and I haven't tied it back into the switcher to show it to you, but I'm going to have that in the next couple days. And it's so great to be able to just send something out and look at it, and you can very quickly see all the things that you need to change or adjust very, very fast. And I'm super happy with it. I've been using Scopebox for a long time, and I still use it a little bit, but I think that the modularity and the ease of building stuff up and literally just the resolution, I think, is better in Omniscopes. Go ahead, Sky, and then Chris, and then Jeffrey.
My inner Fenwick is coming out. A purchase is only 20%. The other 80% is the knowledge of how to use it.
It's so easy. We'll
okay,
do
cool. Love that.
We'll see if we can get those guys to come on and talk through it. But we, and we'll talk about how we use it.
And also the why. Thank you.
Yep.
I was curious, Alex, within arm's reach, how many Mac Minis can you touch?
4. They're right here. They're touching. All right, there they are. So anyway, 3 of them are M1s. Jeffrey?
So instead of software, you can also go for a hardware solution. Like, for instance, we have the Feel Worlds, the Niwers, and that's how you pronounce it, Niwer. And they come up with pretty good monitors. You just do the external monitor, and then that way it's a smaller monitor, sits right underneath your desktop, so it's in viewing range.
Those are great I find those to be excellent in the field, just to have a scope that's connected to my camera that doesn't have to be another computer. In my office, I prefer something like Omniscopes because I can define and redefine the layout of all of the scopes that I want to see. I'm not clicking through one page after another. I can just see them and I can go, today I want more of this scope than that scope, and you can kind of play with it. But I do agree with you that the little monitors are excellent in the field. Next question.
Jonas Dattala, writing in Germany, our friend, says, is there a software that can test sync on a stream, and ideally something that can be hosted in AWS or Amazon Web Services?
There's hardware that can do it. I don't know about software that can test it. The hardware that you're looking for is Hitomi Matchbox. I always want to say Hitomi, but I shouldn't say that. But every time I see it, I want to say that. Go ahead, Chris.
Somebody should make like the definitive sync tool. Like it's just like really, really perfect. Like a file you could play. Like maybe they could cut it in.
It's not that
or something.
Well, that's what So what I do is I just built one for some testing, and mine just has 4 dots that go across, and so it just goes. But I put them out of order. So I go, no, not out of order, but I put them out of sync, so they're not like dut dut dut. What people make mistake is they make it like a drum, and the problem is you can't tell where you're at. So if you're off, you can't tell where it is. So I have it go dut 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 dut, and they are spaced. The pairs are spaced apart, and each one of them, the 2 individual ones, are different distances apart in time. That way, no matter what, I have a 4-second window to figure out where to realign it if I'm way off. Because sometimes we do stuff that is 4 seconds off, and so we have to figure out like how to piece that back together. And so so I just have those dots go. I'm very particular about it though. I build it in motion. I take a 1K tone and I cut it to 1 frame, and then I set it right on the frames that I want right when the dot's on, and I make sure the dot's only on for that, or comes on at that frame, and then I export that out of motion. It's still off by 5 or 10 milliseconds, and in Final Cut I move it in a sub-frame movement so that the sound starts within 2 milliseconds of when the dot appears, and then that becomes and then I do it for every frame rate. So 2398, 24, 2997, 5994. You build them all that way. Because you don't want to go through a scan converter or have any kind of frame adjustment going on, because that'll screw up your understanding of what's actually going on. So that's when I build files, that's what you have to do to do that testing accurately. I do agree with Fenwick that if anyone wants to talk to me about it, I have some ideas. I'm not ready to put them out in public. I have an idea, some ideas of how to be able to create something that you could do in the cloud. Or you just point a camera at something, even an iPhone, and it would just go, "Whoop, you're off by this much," using color. So anyway, but if someone wants to talk to me about that, I'm not going to say that one yet in public. All right, next question.
Chad Lafarge, our friend here from St. Louis, Missouri, says, is there a link to a form to volunteer to help out with production on Mad in the Kitchen?
Yeah, it's going to go out. It will go out over the weekend. It'll go out tomorrow. It almost went out today. I had to onboard somebody for next week. Someone's going to be talking on Monday, and I did it at 5:30 this morning. And I was talking to them, and I had the update that I was supposed to put in, and I literally at 5:53 went, I need to just go do something for 2 minutes, and I went away, and I came in, and when I hit go to update the thing, some of you may have gotten it. The recipes and the update and everything else all went out, but it went out like 15 seconds after Zoom sent the email out. So it'll go out tomorrow morning. Will be a link to the volunteer form. I just missed it by 15 seconds. It was a busy morning this morning because I had to buy an iPad and I had to do a thing and a thing and a thing. All right, next question.
Comes from Andy Carluccio here in the panel, Washington, D.C. I have a strange issue where Dante Virtual Sound Card is not appearing in my Dante Control. It shows up as a device, but it isn't patchable, has a red sync light, and is unavailable for patching. No problem. Any ideas? And he notes Windows 10, maybe the dual NIC is bothering it.
Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, the NIC might be. It might also just be that different devices are at different sample rates. So it's not seeing what the master sample rate is set to.
That's great. Jason?
I would also check MDNS in your switch, because that can get really, really chatty, and that echo can mess with you.
Doug, and then Victor.
Make sure you have a hardware Dante device in there too. Sometimes not having the hardware can cause Dante issues.
I've never seen Dante perform well over a long period of time without a hardware device that has the chip in it to keep it synced up. Victor?
If you're using a Mac, make sure you're not using the Ethernet port on the Mac itself. Those can be problematic, as taught to me by Mickey. So I use an external one, Thunderbolt to Ethernet, and that could be your problem.
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, and on top of that, also make sure that within your network, your router and your switch, that precision time protocol is not blocked for some reason.
All I can say is, as a group, every once in a while, I'm hit with a set of answers that I'm like, we accumulate a lot of knowledge here. It's a crazy thing. All right, next question.
Tommy Chance of St. Paul, Minnesota says, Ken Jordan, is that your playout B that you're running on clips this morning?
No, that was actually a keynote presentation that I made based on everything I've learned in office hours.
Oh, nice.
Just,
that's good.
I've got a presentation to do about why you shouldn't be on internet using Wi-Fi.
That's a great.
Use Ethernet, great audio, etc., etc. It's just a short presentation that I'm making.
You zip through the Wi-Fi. It actually has a dumpster fire image.
Yes.
Animation.
Yeah, that's
That's
no,
great.
that's all. That's all that was.
That's great. Very
Oops.
good. Next question.
David Brady in New York is in next with, is it possible to invite a Zoom room to a webinar in a practice session as a panelist? The room does not have an email address associated with it, so generating a panelist link is not possible. What are the other methods, if there are any?
Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
There is email addresses for it. You got to go dig it in the back end under users, and the Zoom rooms will appear there as a user, and you can grab the email address there and put it in your webinar invitee for the practice session or as a panelist.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, and if there is someone else that is within the same Zoom account or Zoom domain that is already in the panel, that panelist can invite the Zoom room into the webinar.
Next question.
Roman Kuryk of Ukraine, your happy birthday song was a nightmare. Most of the singers had huge interruptions in their voices. It leads to the question, how many speakers can speak at the same time in Zoom? Is it a problem of internal processing or leveling algorithms in Zoom? Or is it just the problem of us not having any singing talent?
So just so you know, we've embraced the nightmare of it. The train wreck is part of the charm. You know, like so when we do it, we started going down the path of like, I figured out a way to cue it and it got better, but I felt like it's the fact that it's a train wreck that makes it so fun. So we don't try very hard to make that work. We're accidentally getting better. Like this last one was better. Like if you think this was a nightmare, you should go back a couple episodes. They get much worse. Go ahead, Jason.
I would say we all can speak, and who you hear is, well, that's not up to us.
Yeah. Next question.
I'm only laughing because I think mine was the first birthday song sung, and it was just so magnificently awful.
Yeah, exactly.
It was
it's great.
fabulous.
And then people bring their wives to like watch the, or significant others to like watch what's going to happen, and it's a disaster. I mean, Hosmick's whole family I think was watching.
That's right, and he had birthday cake and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. All right, next question.
Jason Bache of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and almost every day here on the panel. Has anyone found a good soft case for the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO? Getting tired of wrapping it in my Pelican case.
What I just haven't, my printer doesn't print big enough. I really want to print a shield for the front of it that just clips onto that's my big thing, is just being able to clip on something over the keys.
Yeah, that too would work.
But my printer doesn't go that big. And so I have to figure out how to make a 2-print thing to make it work. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, what I've been transporting our ATEM minis on within a Cinebag CB26, a little shoulder bag. I could fit the ATEM mini there along with a 7-inch small HD monitor and a couple batteries and all the cables needed.
Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I saw something. I can't remember where it was, but there is actually a company that's making clear plastic covers for the ATEMs.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So that might be something to do a quick search.
Yeah,
for.
I saw that too. I'll track it down.
Next question.
Dirk Brewer in Guatemala says, in your services quotes, big projects, what percentage of the cost is assigned to the R&D or external consulting items you require because you're unacquainted on a particular subject?
I don't charge for things that I'm unacquainted for unless it's clear that nobody's acquainted for it. So I get hired to do projects that no one's ever done before. So in that sense, we go, well, this will take this much pre-pro because, it's not that we haven't done it before. It's nobody in the world has ever done it before. And so that usually I get some room to do that. When it comes to something that is just something new for us, I actually don't charge for that. I find that that's my job, is to know how to do that. But if it's within range, of stuff. But if we're creating something from new cloth, it's different. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Bill.
Yeah, exactly what Alex mentioned. Like I would consider R&D as part of OpEx, operating expenses, as opposed to cost of goods sold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, if it's something that is brand new, no one's ever done it before, or no one's done it in your country, or no one's done it, that's a different thing. But when it's like, oh, I don't know how to use Premiere, or I don't know how to use After Effects, or I don't know how to use 3D, do 3D. I haven't done that before. I wouldn't charge the client for anything for that. In fact, I would probably discount that part of the project because they're not paying me to learn. They're paying me to do the thing. Go ahead, Bill.
My strategy has always been the very first line on the budget, the spreadsheet that clients generally don't ask to see, but if they do, it's up there, is the production fee. And the production fee is a pretty robust number. And I just tell them out front, this is the amount you're paying me to know how to make your video and to manage everything going on with it. So any of those kind of costs would be folded into that.
Yep. Go ahead, Chris, and then JJ.
Back in the early 90s when I was learning After Effects, I had the app, I paid for the app, I played with the app for 2 years before I felt like I could charge somebody for what I do now.
Of course, I told Lucasfilm that I knew how to use After Effects, and I had no idea, and so I had to go to Chris and Trish Meyer's class, right? Like literally almost on the way to San Francisco, like to figure it out. So JJ.
So with a large project, which I think this encompasses, since there is going to be a deliverable at some point, there will probably be things that generally in a quote you don't show the client. Like you won't show them screws. Those are just things that you add into it. And if there's elements that are unknowns that might be an unknown, like can I get my hardware to that location, or do I know exactly how to integrate this piece of technology with another piece of technology that you have specific to your environment, then that I would account that into part of my budget. I just wouldn't expose that to the
Yeah,
end user.
it usually kind of comes into the wash, but I generally am pretty sensitive about feeling like I'm charging someone for something that I should know how to do. And that's a subjective call. Next question
comes from Beju in India. What does the panel think of the newly announced Atmos Ninja 8K V Plus recorder with the Ninja Stream?
Do you want to? What camera are we connecting it to? I think is the big question.
Well, part of the thing is Canon's R series of EOS work with it, so I think that's going to be really popular. But I think you can use it on different cameras.
Yeah, go ahead, Beju.
The main thing is this is the first one that does 8K from them, I believe. So you can do 8K 30p. So right now, I think they just said it's going to come support the Canon, but might support other stuff later. And it also supports 4K 120 for the Sony FX9, FX6 series as well as or SDI. So that could be an interesting option for some people. The more interesting part, which they seem to have buried a little bit, is the Ninja Stream. They haven't given any real details about it, but it's supposed to have Ethernet, Wi-Fi. You can stream directly off it, do records and high quality records locally, remotely. So they have an event for it on the 6th, I believe. So it looks like that could be a really interesting way to get high quality local records and stream that output as well without a PC.
Do you know what time
There's no
the
details
stream
about
is?
that. I'll look it up. There's an announcement link. I'll post it.
Yeah, find out.
Sure.
Find out. Go ahead, Charles.
I'd like to know if they actually are doing 444 or 422. That's been a bit of the limitation. I really like them, but they did the Neon series of larger monitors, and there was a lot of expectation, and they kind of came up a little bit short. So I'm glad that they're going back to what they do really, really well and expanding that.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Roman Kryuk of Ukraine says, if you should create your own platform for events, which crucial features will you include? In other words, do you have a lack of important features in existing platforms you already have? I think that was supposed to be features. What are you missing, I guess, in a platform for online events?
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Multi-channel 5171 has been around since the 80s, 90s. So come on.
Yeah, I do think that it depends on the kind of event, but I think that there is, Mickey and I both got to spend a lot of time thinking about immersive sound and high quality video. So a couple of us have. And so that is something I think is really interesting for platforms as we move forward, especially in the entertainment area. I think that, but for me, it's all about audience interaction. Like, how do you tie the audience into the event is all I care about. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I'd love to see multiple cameras that the viewer can choose their own adventure, so to speak. So if they like the drummer of Tool, they can just watch the drummer jam the whole time. Like with Mad in the Kitchen, I would love to see us have a PTZ camera where the viewers can control it, and that just might happen tomorrow.
Nice. Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. The interesting thing that we've seen with Mad in the Kitchen is that people want to definitely want to watch different things, and they can really easily in Zoom. Zoom actually turns out to be a better. I've been doing this for a decade. People say we'd like to be able to choose our own camera angles, and we're like, okay, we'll see how that goes. We do it because it's not my, it's easy for me to do. I just put up multiple streams. They put it into a player, and what we see is about 1% uptick. People, the 1% think it's really cool. Average viewer watches it for maybe 2 minutes and moves away. What changed completely with Mad in the Kitchen was having multiple locations of people cooking and people wanting to build their own super sources and watching the people that they want to watch cook, and follow along. And I think that it really kind of opened our eyes to what may be the devolution of broadcast TV if people start getting used to that. And that starts showing up in a lot of places using something like Zoom, where there isn't a delay. There's not a 2.5 second gap between when you're changing it and you can see all of them. You're not just, it's different. It's much less controlled for a broadcaster. That's kind of terrifying, but it's very interesting. Go ahead, Liberty, and Jeffrey.
I'm going back to your comment about interactivity, like chat. So there's some features in Slack that I think that would be good where you can follow threads, because right now in chat, Mukana does a good job of we can reply in thread, but just seeing some more of that. So people who are comment attendees and they're there, just seeing something more robust.
Yeah, we have some plans. It's on the roadmap to make that much more robust. In a whole bunch of different levels. So, but definitely agree with you. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Inside of Zoom, what I'd love to see is a hidden video comms. So basically, I could sit there and I could tell you to speed up, slow down, whatever. And then the rest of the panel, certain people in the panel, whatever, don't see what I'm doing to keep the show moving forward.
And that's what we use multiple connections for on our end. We have multiple connections so that we can send individual feeds back to the person and also talk into their ear as needed. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed just becoming familiar with this group and in the last few weeks and Mad in the Kitchen, thanks to Guy. And when I watched the most recent Mad in the Kitchen last week, I was reminded in the back of my head about, I think it was NBC Sports, who was the first perhaps to do the scenario with no announcers, but you could kind of punch your own show as a viewer, if you will, choose your camera. And I was thinking how that non-linear approach, if you will, to Mad in the Kitchen would be a lot of fun and even tighten the cohesion, a feeling included for the various cooks and the various room breakouts and homes.
After 10 or 15 years of doing it, it's the first time I've ever seen it work. And it does work really well. Sky, real quick.
Yes.
We're gonna start going fast.
Is a survey possible to show the difference, or to get people's thoughts on participatory versus just observing? Is that the correct?
It could be. I don't know how
questions?
accurate it'll be, but I think it's more of just watching what people behaviors at the moment. But we can put up a thing. I don't know how accurate it'll be. Okay, we're going to move really fast now. We have a lot of questions. Definitely vote on those questions because it's going to be fast and furious for the next 10 minutes. Next question.
Keenan Campbell, Princeton, Illinois. Thinking of Mad in the Kitchen, I think we should create an X keys built into a cutting board for remote chefs to control camera views. Thoughts? Why not into the knife handle?
Stream Deck. Stream Deck would probably be the easiest. Go ahead, Craig, real quick.
There's some Bluetooth foot pedals that can trigger Stream Deck as well. So if you want to roll something slick, you could just have a foot pedal under the counter and switch your camera shots there.
With X keys also, you can have just closures. So you can build whatever kind of button you want, and you can put it in different places. Like you could put one where it's next to the cutting board, and you hit it, and it will just cut to the cutting board. And then you hit another one, it cuts to the wide, and it can be any kind of button you want. And it's just looking for closures for X keys. Go ahead, Mickey.
Might be a nice weekend project for Mr. Fenwick.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Graham Cardwell of Belfast, Northern Ireland. Can I add a video file made in Resolve or Premiere into Wirecast as a lower third, or am I restricted to a still image like a PNG?
Go ahead, John.
Yes. So hold on, give me a second. You caught me on not paying attention here. So
hurry up. We're running out of time. Got to move fast.
Is it not? Oh, please,
no,
hold on.
Don't try to pull it up. You just got it.
That's a video running inside of new Wirecast 4.2.
And so you're exporting how out to it?
This is exported out of After Effects with the Alpha channel.
And what file format?
It's It's a MOV.
MOV and it's 444.
I don't know the answer to that.
Does it come in with an alpha channel? So it comes with an alpha channel, so it's got to be 4x4. Yeah. Go ahead, Mickey, real quick.
You can export out a video with both key and fill, like with a 444 or two separate video files, or you can just do you can do a Lumi key with if you maintain appropriate black levels.
Perfect. Next question.
Guy Cochran of Seattle, Washington, here on the panel. Anyone using HAPS, HAPPS.TV to stream? If so, what makes it different?
This is the first time I've heard of it. Go ahead, Jeffrey, real quick.
So I have a HAPS channel out. It basically is like a Restream or a StreamYard, and what it does is it will stream out to your multiple channels. They'll make it sound like you have thousands of subscribers, but it's really just your Facebook and your Twitter and all those amalgamated together. The bad part about it is their overlays. They put overlays that run over your head, and then of course, they tell people to go back to haps.tv. So it needs some work.
Yep. Next, Mark, real quick, we're going to.
Yeah, just real quick, have been using it. I totally agree about the overlays, especially the emphasis on coins, which is aimed at supporting the broadcasters, the content providers. But the people who are doing it seem to be trying really hard. They hold regular meetings where they engage with the community, much like you do here. And yeah, so they're definitely trying. I don't know if it's going to be a great long-term solution, but they're doing something where they're trying, and that's good.
That's great. Next question.
Scott Mueller of Clinton's Corners, New York. What settings are you using on the WLM meter? How many seconds is the short term set for? Which method, EBU, LM1, or dialogue? Also, why did you decide on -24 LUFS when Zoom's auto mic level seems to want to be a little hotter at -18 or so?
Go for it, Mickey.
Yeah. The meters that we're using here in office hours is set to EBU and with a weighting of ITU 1770. I suggested -24 LUFS because most people that join us on the panel could more easily reach -24 as opposed to the previous goal that was set, which was at -20. And also a lot of people, even though we set it at -20 during mic checks, tend to speak louder during the show, and it would oftentimes reach -16, -14. And also it's a nicer level in terms of maintaining fuller dynamic range. We want less people slamming against limiters.
That's great. Next question.
Greg Gibson, Washington, D.C. The B-Link by Courtney have been picking up steam here. It seems most are using the Zoom screen capture. What is the recommended model for this? Any other specific use? We found that Zoom won't run in 1080 on cloud instances using less than 8 cores. So we want to make sure your B-Link is capable.
Are you going to go, Courtney? Do you have any input? I mean, it's your computer.
Well, first of all, you can't find them anymore, and I think because of the chip shortage, the one I like, the half height 4125. I just ordered one that's the similar chipset from AWOW that's double the thickness of these, and it comes with 8 gigs. It comes with a 4125, which is 4 cores, but only 4 threads because it's a Celeron. You can get the i5s, which will give you 4 threads as well because they're only dual core. I'm not sure, Alex, where you're buying the i5s, were they available in quad core or just the dual core?
I have to go back and look. I didn't order them. We couldn't get the other ones, and so we bought them a little beefier just to make sure we had a little headroom, and they seem to work really well. And we're moving more and more towards them for remotes.
Yes.
We're still using big Dells for the locals, although I don't know if we need to or not.
I mean, it works fine for a single instance. You know, if you're just leaking a client in, it'll handle Zoom okay.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you're going to run more than one, or what was his choice? Run in 1080 in the cloud. If you have whatever your software is using the GPU acceleration, it should work fine. If you're trying to do it on the CPU, then you're going to run into trouble.
Next question.
Gregory Wheeler in Maryland says, Alex, your video looks amazing today. What changed?
Why, thank you. Yeah. So a couple things. I'm using a LUT that Charles created. I changed my background to just gray for a different thing that I was working on, and then I am also have a polarized. I added a polarized filter to it, which I think there's some kind of combination of all of that stuff. It seems to be working pretty well. Next question.
Jonas Dattel, Reutlingen, Germany. Can SRT use a signaling server like used in WebRTC for its rendezvous mode?
Go ahead, Andy.
We're going to talk about that in just a second if we can postpone that one. We can go into it more
Well, let's go ahead and put that back in. We'll hold on to that one. Next question.
Michael Anderson in Jackson, Wyoming. There we go. Now I can get that. And there, thank you. Does anyone have experience using the Panasonic BGH1 for live productions, especially the SDI output?
I'm not familiar with it. I haven't bought Panasonic in a long time. Go ahead, Charles.
It was just used in a production that I was at, and the only complaint that I heard from the technicians was that the color coming out of the SDI was 422, but that's just the SDI, and that's the only thing that I know about it.
Next question.
Abe in San Diego says, thinking of getting the new iPad Pro, but notice the 12-inch is the one that comes with the XDR screen. Do you think it's worth getting the 12-inch for that screen? I was interested in the 11-inch because of the smaller size.
The main reason I'm buying the iPad is for the XDR screen. Go ahead, Charles.
Same reason.
It's a really inexpensive XDR monitor. Like to me, that happens to do a bunch of other things. All right, so I would say yes. Next question.
Stan Chan of Roseville. Hi, Stan. Working on a new live gaming venture. Each event generates $2 million. How much of that should be reserved for running the event?
I'd say 1.5 million. You know what I mean? Like like 1.8 million. Like like so. I mean, it's at the beginning, it'll be 2 million. Like the first time you do it, it'll be 2 million or 3 million to do a $2 million event. The bottom line is what I would say is when you're kicking anything off is spend into it. Don't, like, the mistake that we make is people want to get a big margin off the first one and then they don't do all they could do. And you want people to pay for it and walk away going, wow, I want to see every one of those. And so we tend to spend into something to make that work. I don't know what your other costs are, but I would say the total cost for the first couple for me would be almost 100%, if not very close to it, or sometimes a little over it, hoping that I'm going to build into something that is going to build up to something better over time. Next question.
James Babbitt, San Diego. Hi, Alex. How much storage do you recommend ordering in the new iPad Pro?
I finally landed on 1 terabyte. I decided 2 terabytes was probably more than I need. It was excessively expensive to put 2 terabytes in, and I wasn't sure if I needed. I was at 512 right before I hit go, and I was like, I better go to 1. So that's where I'm at. Next question.
Abe in San Diego's back. When can we do a training of how to create XLR cables or coax cables? Would love to learn to make them myself.
Soon. It'll happen after the test kitchens that we're doing for Man in the Kitchen. So there'll be 4 weeks of that, and then after that there'll be some afternoons that are open, and we'll probably put some labs into that. Next question.
Gabrielle Losordo in Milan, Italy says, did any of the panelists attend the Adobe Summit? What do you think of their production choices, pre-recorded high-quality videos, and almost non-existent audience interaction?
That's what I think of it. No audience interaction. Like, why? The pre-recorded videos are great. I mean, I think it's fine. It does let you watch it quicker if later in VOD. Were they streaming it? I only saw like a glimpse of it.
Yeah, they streamed part of it, but it was actually very boring.
Yeah. Anyway, audience interaction is a big thing, I think. I mean, we've all decided as a group that audience interaction is kind of the thing. And so if you're just going to put something out that's kind of a dead end, that's what I think of that kind of thing.
It's like Apple, you can get to engineers and stuff like that during the event,
right?
If you know how to do it. And they kind of secret, but the idea is Adobe, it's so secret that they didn't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we are shifting gears. So I'm going to while I go out and tweet, because I'm pretty excited about this one, I'm going to let Andy kind of give us an overview of what he's about to show us. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alex. And it's so good to be with everybody again today. The company Liminal, it's our company. We do a couple of things. You guys know us through Zoom OSC, right? And we did all that training together. But it's not the only thing that we do. We also are involved in a product called Streamweaver. And Streamweaver is a solution to a problem that I came across about a year ago, as COVID decentralized production was really heating up. And what I had this issue where we had a lot of lights that were in theaters, but nobody could go to those theaters. So we had all these lights that we couldn't use. And we had all this talent, these theatrical lighting designers who had tons of experience, but no way to access the equipment that they needed and nobody to show, you know, what they were going to do. So in a decentralized production, the most they could really do is give advice about, you know, the fixtures that were there, or, you know, how to shape the light on somebody, or how to light a green screen. But they had all this untapped talent, all this design, you know, how to do color really well, how to do moves and changes and all that kind of stuff really well. So my first question was, okay, how do I do DMX over IP? And I tried a couple of things. I tried just a direct UDP stream of ArtNet. ArtNet is that wrapper protocol for DMX that turns it into an IP protocol. Tried sending that over IP. Didn't work out so well. It was hard. There wasn't a lot of software out there to allow me to really get the routing into the nodes correctly. It was just a lot of hassle and a lot of port forwarding and things like that that was going to be prohibitive, especially for like executive talent or things like that. There was just no way it was going to work. The next thing I tried was VPN. And in a lot of situations that worked, but what I started to notice is that as we were adjusting values, like doing a fade or doing a color move or something like that, it would stutter. And when I realized what was happening is we were dropping packets. And because DMX is sort of a stateful protocol, when you lose a frame of it, your light just doesn't know what to do. It either freezes if your node is good and knows to hang on the last frame, or if your node is not set up to do that, it drops and it goes to black and it flickers. And that's a huge problem, right? So I needed something that was really reliable. And it just so happened that at the same time as I was doing that, I was learning about SRT and how to transport video over WAN, right? And specifically, I was looking at the NDI SRT relationship. And it just so I made this click on a total whim that I don't have to put an MPEG TS stream through SRT. I can take any generic UDP data and I can encode it in the SRT protocol and get all the benefits of the protocol without all of the latency that a big MPEG TS stream needs, because it's just show control data. And we did some tests, and well, I'm excited to show you the results. So, Jonathan, if you're ready, this is Streamweaver. So we've created a decentralized production control system that allows you to take any hardware from anywhere in the world and make it talk to any other hardware, just so long as those pieces of hardware know how to communicate over network protocols. So what you're seeing right now is I have these different DMX fixtures in my room, and they are communicating via Streamweaver to with Jonathan's network. Jonathan has a board, and Jonathan, I don't know if you can get co-host from the production team so that you can screen share if you don't have it already. But Jonathan's running Universe Control, and Universe is outputting ArtNet, and he's got a little thing that he's put together with the different lights in the room.
Well, do explain it. Do explain exactly what Jonathan's setup is on his side.
Yeah, I want to have him show it through a screen share here. Mm-hmm. So you've got Universe Control running, and there's a bunch of faders, and those faders are mapped to different channels of the ArtNet output. And that is going out into his local software loopback, right? It's the 127001. It's just playing it inside of his computer, basically. Streamweaver is sitting inside of that computer. I don't know, Jonathan, if you're able to drag that over so they can see the interface. But it's listening to the UDP data that's sitting there on 127001 on port 6454, which is where ArtNet is located. And it is sending it over WAN to me on my side. And my Streamweaver is decoding that and turning it back into the UDP data that I need inside of my network.
And to be clear, there's no VPN, there's no open ports, there's no.
Well, so we'll talk about ports. So there's a couple different pairing modes that you have with the SRT protocol. So you've got caller mode, which allows you just to shoot straight out of a network, no matter how many layers there are or anything like that. If you can access WAN, you are able to just call right out of it. Then you have listener mode, which is the opposite side, where if you have an open port on your network, you can have a caller call into you and come down. And that's pretty much your standard, UDP networking basics. But what's cool about SRT is it also has a rendezvous mode, and that's what we're using right now. So in rendezvous mode, neither endpoint is required to have any open ports. It's this trick where if both of us are using the same port number, we can basically get a symmetry to occur if we both have a one-layer network, where we can do the handshake that's required to begin the data stream by just mirroring ports across the network. So if you've got a one-layer network on both sides, this is what was super helpful for us in the breakthrough for theatrical work. Nobody had to port forward. We didn't have to teach lighting designers how to port forward their network. We didn't have to teach talent how to port forward their network. And we didn't have to go run something in the cloud for everybody to call up to. Now, we still could do that, and that's a viable solution in a lot of scenarios where you've got maybe complex networks on both sides, and Rendezvous is not going to be an option, but neither network has the option to port forward. Typically speaking, in show control, where I'll get into a little bit of that in a second, and those workflows with Victor's setup, Victor and I are using caller listener. So Victor is calling out of his network into our studio system here, and I've just got some open ports that we keep on this network. And so I just tell Streamweaver to communicate with that.
And did Victor have to do anything?
Just had to run the app. Just had to install, run the app, and then treat everything else as normal. And I'll do a breakdown of Victor's thing here in a second. But I want to show the interface just to be specific to what do you actually do inside of our program here. So this is Streamweaver. It has a couple of different tabs. The idea that I was trying to get around was that I want to not have to think about IPs and ports and all that stuff. I want to think about people and data. And that is what Streamweaver tries to abstract for you. So I'll start down here in the profiles view. What I have here is a collection of different IP addresses, and I've sorted them by whether they're internal NICs inside of my computer, whether they're external individuals. I can find, Jonathan on this list here, and then you can see different IP addresses, and I can edit them there and save them. And then I have local devices here. I have my broadcast addresses for the different NICs in my computer. I have direct addresses to my phone and other devices that are on my network, and I can type those in. By default, we give you a broadcast address for every NIC in your computer, but you can go in and fill out other ones if you desire to do so. The receiving tab is where I can set up, and I can name this stream. I want to say, maybe it's light control in. And I want to go grab, and I can pick a protocol here. It's not mission critical that you identify it. We have some presets for different protocols that we know will work well. So if you have, but really it can transport any generic UDP data. So by default, we give you access to ArtNet, OSC, Visca, and SACN. But truly, I've done all sorts of protocols, things that I wasn't even aware of existed when I made Streamweaver, and it can transport pretty much any UDP data. So I'll say for now, I'm going to do that, and it's going to be maybe ArtNet. Then I can pick one of the many people that I have the privilege of interacting with here, and maybe it's Jonathan that I'm grabbing from. Then I can pick a transmission port. Now that port is either going to be one of the ports that I have open in my network if I'm the studio side. If I'm the talent side, I just receive this port. I'm told what port to put in there. I can also just receive a .wvr file, and they can preset Streamweaver into a certain mode, so your talent never has to go in and do any of this. You can just preload it and ship it out. But I'll enter maybe 22950 or something like that. And then I would select an internal profile. This would be where I want to dump the data, right? And that can be a loopback or one of my specific NICs if I want to talk to a specific part of the internal box. I also have this thing called a local forwarding profile. It's currently grayed out because I'm running in listener mode. But a local forwarding profile is what I'm doing on the other computer that's running Streamweaver for my lighting control. And that is basically forwarding the packets that are coming in via SRT as UDP to a specific address or to a broadcast address. So I have an ArtNet node sitting next to me, which is converting the ArtNet protocol into physical DMX, that 3-pin cable, right? That or 3 or 5 pin, I guess. But and that's going out and daisy chaining to all these different fixtures here, which have their addresses. So that box has an IP address through DHCP, or I can give it a static IP. But again, in most residences, what I'll just do is I'll broadcast it to everything, because your talent typically doesn't have a whole bunch of stuff that's going to care if DMX is coming to it. But you could go through the effort of figuring out what the IP address was, and you could work it out there. But this is sort of a 0-step setting. On the sending side, this is actually active right now. So once you create some streams, they get logged in the left column. And they have indicator lights based on whether they're active or in an error state or still trying to pair or something like that. You get information there. And then finally, the pairing modes, right? So this is just where you select globally for the whole app, whether you want to be in Rendezvous caller or listener. You can see your IP address there and copy it to clipboard or get some information on versioning. So that's the app itself. What I want to show real quick, I'm going to switch my camera over to this little robot guy. And Jonathan, if you want to get control of the robot special, I just want to show how smooth this is. So let me go to NDI here, and there's my robot. And you'll see, now bear in mind my camera's doing some auto adjustments here, but as we start to maybe bring in, can you bring in maybe a blue light even on that one? That performed pretty well. You're getting a smooth transition of color, and you're not getting like a pop or a lost frame of data. So this is really important. This is what you can't normally achieve with a VPN, a software-based VPN, right? You can go buy a $500 piece of hardware and put it on both sides, and you'll probably get a pretty good result, right? But that's not always an option. Either for budgetary reasons or just because logistically it's a bit of a nightmare to set that up. So that's just showing you kind of the smoothness of how that all comes together. The rest of this I want to show you, I want to do on Victor's network because we got a really cool tie in here.
Okay.
So this is for Victor's production, as you guys have seen, the Sunday Sax Jam. There's a couple of different pieces going on. You got the ATEM, you got QLab, you got X32, right? And all of these devices have an API for OSC, just like Zoom OSC. They have commands that can come in and they can be remote controlled, and they can also sometimes export information into the network, right? ATEM, that's going to be ATEM OSC. It's just a little bolt-on that can communicate the ATEM's protocol. QLab has it directly built in the X32, in Victor's case, has it built in as well. So what I've done is I've mapped Victor's different show control files to my Korg Nano Control. It's a little MIDI pad. I'll show you what that looks like. So if I go to my Logi camera here, here's my Nano Control, and I've mapped a couple of different things on Victor's faders here. So I'll start with the ATEM. So I set the top row of buttons here to be the different cameras that are available on ATEM input. So if you watch Victor's camera feed, as I select different sources here, Victor's ATEM is being switched by me remotely, and Victor, you're in South Dakota, and I'm here in Washington, D.C., and I can say that the latency is pretty similar to what I would expect with a little bit of Zoom delay built in. But I think we only add somewhere between a 15th and a 20th of a second to do this transmission across country. So, probably midway through, it's probably pretty low. But I can switch you here with that. You got your super sources bound up to this button here, so I'll hit that, and now we're in super source mode. And now I can pop between the different super source layouts that you have in your ATEM as well. So right here, I have pretty much full control visually of what the Sunday Sax Jam looks like, which is something that, that's pretty cool. But the other part of the jam, obviously, is the sound. So I'm going to pop over to the camera that shows the board. And if we're in the right mode here, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the fader that controls the saxophone mic. So you see right there, I'm sliding. You can do a side-by-side. I'm sliding on my Nano Control, and the motorized fader in the X32 is being moved. So I've mapped this just to his level for the saxophone. And then I've mapped this guy over here to bus 14, which is the reverb for the microphone.
Sunday.
So I'm going to put up to full. Go ahead again.
Sunday.
I don't have that one set up right now, but I definitely have the other one. I don't know if you have to move it to another bank, Victor, maybe on 14, because I don't have 14 going there.
Okay, hold on a second. All right. Okay, try it now.
All right, I got 14 at full now.
Okay, test one.
No, I don't have that yet. We'll have to come back to that one. I'll take another look at how I have it.
Reverb returns seem to be muted.
Oh, are they? Okay, how about now?
Okay, try now.
Check one, two. Check.
No, I still don't have the reverb channel yet, but that could just be a mapping thing. Anyhow, but I definitely have board control because we saw that on the other bank. So the communication's there. I just have to go figure out the API for this board and figure out exactly what commands are required where. The other fun one I'll show you, though, is if we stay on this shot, and Victor, I'm going to go to the wave preset. I don't know if you have to set anything on the board there when I go to the wave.
Yep, it's in the right bank. Go ahead.
Okay, so here we go on the wave. So there we go. So I'm sending, once it initializes, let me slow down the rate of this here. I'll go to maybe 10 hertz on the pulse so it doesn't try to overwhelm it. But I'm sending these little sine waves to the different keys there, and I just kind of screw around with my board and get that to go. So nice and smooth, depending on how you set up your sample rates, of course. But that's how I would control the Sax Jam. So all that I have to send, to TJ or somebody like this is this MIDI controller, which I have mapped to OSC right now, and then I can send that right inside of Victor's network and have full control of that. So lighting, video, sound, playback, all that stuff can be controlled. And again, I didn't have to build an app that understood any of this. I just had to build an app that understood how to transport the things that already exist. So all of our gear that already knows how to talk to each other can have that conversation just over the public IP. So that's the product, and we'll continue to do some demos here. But I'm happy to dive into some questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
Just quickly, is that I know the Korg doesn't have motorized faders, but is there a way to get return, or are you getting return data from his X32? If you had an X-Touch or another 32 in mirror mode, would you have, if he moved a fader, would you see it?
We could, if that board has the ability to externalize its output, so either through MIDI, right, if you plug in a cable and then you can use that fader and talk to the MIDI protocol, or if it actually has an OSC output, which a lot of boards like the X32 do, then you can transport it back. So what I could do is I could round robin this, and I could have OSC going into the board, and then OSC coming out of the board, and then turn them both into SRT with a bidirectional Streamweaver connection, which we can do. And that's sometimes what's going to be required for other protocols as well, like Visca, where Visca may want to talk back to you depending on how the controller is built. You may have something like I know Vmix does this. Vmix actually compares the encoder readouts when you're using Visca inside of the PTZ controller to its current position, so that you can have more granular adjustments, kind of like a classic controller. So while the protocol isn't strictly speaking bidirectional, you can get bidirectional communication working. So to get that functionality, you need to set up 2 streams, one out, one in.
Awesome.
And again, the idea that we can just drop a pack that you can control the whole room. And one of the things we're really interested in is being able to bring in, obviously, remote guests, possibly musicians, and all kinds of other things where we want a lot more than just their webcam, and being able to have total control over the space, the lights, the background, the everything. And this seems to be, and we've always been like, well, like for instance, the kits that we send out right now have that $500 box built into it. It's a Z3 Meraki that just ties us into the location, but we're still limited also in the sense that we're still only using apps that really let us do that, rather than just about anything that can talk to OSC. Go ahead, Victor.
I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on what this does for me, inspired by your Man in the Kitchen helper thing. I can now, instead of having to automate everything in QLab, I can get TJ, who's volunteered to do this, send him that MIDI controller and assign, my mic mix versus the music. I can have those buttons be assigned to playouts that I have for my lower thirds, or for my show opener, or for my time clock. And, he can just be the vision mixer for the whole thing and do switching for me. So it simplifies my outcome so much that I can focus more on the performance, which has not always been the case. So, and obviously this also can tie into to Stream Deck and using Companion, which is, so the possibilities are going to be pretty big. In the next 2 weeks, I'll be working with TJ to make that happen. And the next one I do will be run by him.
Amazing. Sky?
Victor, where are your assets? Because in StreamYard, we would throw them up to their system. Currently in our experience, we're sending them all to Alex. Where are yours living physically?
They're in my computer, and they're called upon by QLab. So it's
Okay,
very,
so they're local
very
to you.
simple. Yeah, and then they go to a screen on my ATEM. One of the inputs on my ATEM with Luma key. That's how I do it.
Copy.
That's great. Next question.
Okay, the first one in this group is Beju in India. Says, how easy is it for Streamweaver to traverse complex networks such as corporate or home ones with double NATs, and how easy is it to set up?
So in that situation, it's unlikely that you're going to have a good experience with Rendezvous Mode, but you'll have a perfectly fine experience with caller and listener mode. So when you can call out of a network of any complexity, just as long as you can get to the public internet through that network. So as long as there's some chain, like if you can go to like Google, you can get to the internet, then SRT will be able to find its way out there. The challenge will be is if you do have a situation where you have complex networking on both sides and you don't have the option to port forward into one, like a studio setup. The situation we see is where we've got a lighting designer in an apartment building and a theater at an academic institution, where their IT staff is not going to help us port forward there, and the other one, the building staff, is not going to let you port forward there. So what you do in that case is you spin up an AWS instance, and there's a couple of different things you can run on it. You can run just Streamweaver on an AWS instance and put it in listener mode, and everybody call up to it, and then just loop inside of the instance the different ports in Streamweaver so that it makes the connection there, and that's pretty cheap. The other thing you can do is if you're, and this is what we do with people who integrate with our software, is we'll spin up a SRT gateway in the cloud, and that's made by Haivision, and it's like $1 and change an hour, and it lets you create these actual like node-based connections of input and output flows, and you can run that in listener mode as well, and everybody can call up to it. One last thing I'll say on that is the beauty of using SRT for show control is that your bandwidth cost is practically nothing. I mean, DMX is so small compared to what we do when we do high bitrate video. OSC, which is what I'm sending for Victor right now, I think by the end of the year I may have done a kilobit of of OSC. So leaving that on, your bandwidth cost is not going to be bad. It's just going to be the $1 something. So it's predictable cost in that sense, and it may be more scalable.
Good, Beju.
So Andy, speaking about running a node in the cloud, basically, what kind of CPU would you need for that? Would it be a micro instance? Could that be able to do that, or would you need a G instance or something bigger to do that?
I've
Just
tested it
run
without a
node to
G
do a loop back.
instance. Yeah, I haven't needed a G instance to do it. So I've been able to get it off with some fairly cheap offerings. Obviously, there's a sort of caveat that I'll say that I don't, because I don't know every single UDP protocol you could send. There could be one that's really, really hungry, or one that you may want to have intermediate acceleration for. I've just not found one. So I've been in most show control scenarios, I don't require any high-end compute power to run Streamweaver. But if you have, thousands of samples per second that you have to decode, and they're really, really large frames of data, maybe there would be a situation.
Go ahead, Beju.
Also, would there be any limit on how many you would instances you could connect to one node, basically, to do the loop out? Is there a limit to that? Or is it just one or two at a time, or can you do more if you need to?
So Streamweaver, first of all, the software doesn't limit how many streams you can make. The second thing is that and it's funny, I was just talking with somebody about this the other day. You can kind of strategize how you want to do it. So this client wants to build Streamweaver into their software so that they can have data values that are represented in different instances of their program, which require smooth communication, be negotiated. So we talked about this cloud instance where everybody could just call up to it. And the first thing we thought about is, okay, we just open up one stream and we put one port, and then we have all the software endpoints kind of uniquely identify themselves. And then it's just literally one connection, and all the endpoints flow through it, and their data tags are sort of signed. Now, we kind of thought about that for a bit, like, okay, wait, for security reasons though, like that means that anybody could see anybody else's packets. That's probably not such a good idea. So in that case, we came up with a little API call that just will create new streams on the fly on new ports. And so you can just allocate new ports as needed for as many streams as you want. And in AWS, that's even easier than at a residential network, right? So that's how I would approach that.
Next question.
Comes from Victor in Brookings, South Dakota. Can you talk about incorporating a MIDI control surface into this workflow? What software and hardware does one need?
Absolutely. So let me show you what I'm doing right now with the Nano Control. So I just have Isadora running right now. It's kind of my pocket program for pretty much everything control related. And I got some pretty simple nodes here. So I'm going to just zoom in on one of them. This is a control watcher. It listens for MIDI show control.
Anybody else seeing it? I'm blocked. I'm just getting
You're not seeing
text message. I'm not.
Taking a little time. Zoom sometimes is taking a little time to get the screen sharing out, it seems.
Okay.
I'm just waiting for it to pop up here. It says
Yeah.
it says you started, but it just hasn't shown.
Well, let me take it down and let me just run scan convert, and I'll pass it in as a virtual input, and then you can take a look at how it's done there. But the what I'm going to show you is that Isadora is just translating MIDI to OSC, but there's a million programs that do that as well. So I'm doing that because I want to map my fader values, and I want to do some math about how I want them calculated so that it matches the scale that the X32 uses, versus just the 0 to 127 that I get natively out of this MIDI bus. So I'm doing some math there just because I am inclined to do so. But you could use a program like Oscillator or something like that, which can just sit there on the Mac and translate your MIDI to OSC and your OSC back to MIDI, or different standards of OSC to each other. So you could do all that stuff there. Now let me see if are you seeing that now on my screen? Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Let's zoom in a bit here and make this easier to look at. So I have a control watcher. This is going to be the thing that cuts to, let me do the second input there and the first input. So these are two MIDI controls. They're tied to the mute buttons here. So you see how I'm hitting on the keyboard, you get a little X that fires, and I do a little comparison to see, when the button's held down, it sets the value to 127. So I just say, okay, was that 127? If so, fire /atem/vic atem/program 1, or /atem/vic atem/program 2. And that is telling ATEM OSC to cut between the two cameras. And if you're watching Victor in the background, you'll see that he's getting switched there. Up top, this is where I'm doing something ever so slightly more complicated, but not really. It's just a little bit of dividing by 127 because I have to send a value normalized between 0 and 1. So as I adjust the fader here, you'll see the value is accumulating and it's moving towards 1. And then I can pull it back. And I just had that tied to both a trigger and a control there. And you can look at Victor's board, and you'll see that that's sliding as I do that. Now, channel 14, maybe you can spot the issue here, Victor, but I have it /bus/14/mix/fader. Maybe I have something wrong there in my syntax, but that's That's what that button's doing there. It's just not firing out there. Some syntax thing probably, right? So that's how that's all mapped. Again, that could be Osculator or any other program that does the translation. So it doesn't, strictly speaking, have to be Isadora, but for reactive systems, or if you want to have like, enough comments in Zoom, if people say louder enough, it can count them and then increase the fader as needed, right? You can make those kind of interactions, silly things like that, but also, some serious kinetic interactions between the world and the data from the virtual event. Again, the lighting control for me, this literally changed theater in my mind. Like the show, all of the shows that rolled out Streamweaver were like New York Times picks. When they came out because of this option, which you just could not do. And we had, again, all this knowledge and all this talent from these really brilliant, like Tlaloc, like there is somebody who is a brilliant lighting designer, show designer, who just didn't have the ability to just, I just need my board to talk to that light. I just need to get, and the VPN and all the students, he had 14 students in different locations, some on campus, some at home, some living together in a multiplex building. Like, it was just going to be so complicated to try to get a VPN through all that. So expensive. The budget wasn't there. So we brought Streamweaver in, and then he had full lighting control of the entire production. So
good. And one of the things is that I look at it as not just board to board, but event to board, event to, I won't get into the details of it, but as people have known, I've told some stories about some kinetic interactions where the audience is actually controlling real life things like a flamethrower. And it has been extremely compelling for the audience to be able to be part of the show, actually affect physical items in the show, whether those are lights or objects or other things. And so I think that there's a huge future in being able to grab data. Like, I want to look at how we take data from Mukana, for instance, and push it into, through Streamweaver into the lights or the, et cetera, to kind of play with it. Go ahead, Victor.
Speaking of Tulak, he wanted me to comment that he is super reliant on this product and that he's been so pleased with it. He's been using it since the fall, and he recommends it intensely. So he wanted me to make sure you guys heard that from a user that's making money from it.
Outstanding. Next question.
Jonas Dattel, Reutling in Germany. Can SRT use a signaling server like used in WebRTC for its rendezvous mode? That was the pullback question from earlier.
Right. So again, that rendezvous mode is going to work really well when you have a one-layer network on both sides. Then you don't need an intermediary server. I'll put an article about how SRT rendezvous mode works under the hood. It's pretty cool, but it's fragile. Like it works really well when you've got I got that one layer FiOS network. Jonathan's got the exact copy, up the street from me, and it's very easy for us to negotiate rendezvous mode connections. In North America, it's actually fairly common the way that ISPs have set up home routers and things like that. It's usually pretty common. I actually discovered the need to create caller and listener mode when I was working with some folks in Europe, specifically in Germany, where they have these router standards that just block the way that rendezvous would be required to be used. So that's where I started to explore caller listener mode. I don't know about intermediary signaling servers specifically. What I do know is that symmetry is key. So you have to be able to basically reflect on the same port number all the way through in order to get a match. If there's one layer that's disconnected there, you're going to end up in a desynced situation, and it won't be able to create the handshake to establish the stream. But it is pretty cool that you can get a secure encrypted connection just off of reflection across a common port number. That technology is pretty interesting.
Next question.
And Jonas got voted up to the next highest question as well. Is there an API or SDK to use Streamweaver as a developer?
So that's something we're working on as well. So again, what Streamweaver is basically an interface that exists on top of SRT. We have a custom compile of SRT that we use that optimizes it for data stream transmission and show control environments. And so then we built a UI on top of that, and it communicates with that core. What's cool about Streamweaver is that it actually just is a core of files. So it can be run headlessly. And then, when we distribute it as a direct-to-consumer app, there's a UI that bolts onto it and translates UI interactions into that core. So that core is licensable. So we can set that core up with other pieces of software, and we can communicate that. We're working on creating right now a formalized API that lists out, how to establish streams and optimize them for different types of show control and all of that. Just basically adding a mezzanine layer inside of that core. But we can do the core integration as part of enterprise connections with different software companies. But for a general developer, we're going to work on a direct offering for that.
Next question.
Lee Love in Washington, D.C. says, Andy, first of all, comment, excellent concept for SRT. And then he says, can I use Streamweaver to have an X32 remotely control another X32 console?
So the X32 has an output for OSC just as it has an input. So you should be able to do that. You can also simplify and just have the MIDI output from the X32 go into oscillator, and then you could specifically type in, if you need to do some sort of like trickery where you have a certain bank that's used for like your mix, then you want to have your other 16 channels be the first 16 channels that the other person needs. So you want your board to run in both modes. You need to map channels 16 to 32 to 1 to 16 or 0 to 16 or whatever on the audio engineer side. So you may want to put some software in between there to get the little rerouting connections to go, but I don't think you'll have a problem with that.
Good, Victor.
Andy, we can try that 14 thing again. It was a error on my side that should be fixed.
All right, I'm going to pop over here. There you go. And let's see. Yeah, there we go. So I don't know if you have that mic handy.
Yeah, I have it handy with lots of.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, we got the reverb. Yeah, we got it.
So now he can control how much reverb. And
yeah.
The other bus's effects, which he doesn't have mapped for the delay. But this is super great because if I'm playing a song, and in the chorus I want to have the delay be more prominent, or I could program one of his mini buttons to be a tap delay so it can do it in time. I mean, the possibilities are pretty endless. It's very cool stuff.
And Andy, I'm sure that this is possible, but the process of, like, for instance, if I wanted to have an ATEM panel control another ATEM, what would be the process of getting that working across Streamweaver?
Yeah, absolutely. So the ATEM's outputs are something that ATEM OSC, the program, doesn't have an output stream. So what we'd have to do is we'd have to map some other export that comes from the ATEM to OSC and then get it in there. And that's where the idea of translation protocols comes into play. So one that we see this a lot with is HID, human interface device, which is the kind of your classic serial like joysticks and controllers and things like that. They communicate with the computer when they're connected via serial via a protocol that basically either emulates a keyboard and mouse or it shows up as an HID driver. And with programs like Isadora, you can actually translate the HID inputs into OSC. I don't know if Oscillator does that, but Oscillator has some weird ones too, like a Wii remote. You can map all the buttons to OSC. So it's like, basically we just have to figure out what protocol that is and then figure out how to translate it. And then once it's as a network protocol, we can move it around.
That's great. Next question.
Gregory Wheeler in Maryland is up next with Andy. What MIDI controller are you using?
I stole it from Jonathan. It's a Korg Nano Control Studio.
Yeah, those are great. I've used them a couple times for a lot of things. Next question.
Roscoe Jones in the panel often. Any checklists or tips for building control locally and then installing remotely? Maybe an office hours Discord, or is there another Streamweaver forum that they should look at? Maybe deploying is a better verb.
So a couple of things there. First, if you're looking for support on this, always welcome to reach out in the office hours Discord. We don't have a channel for Streamweaver. Maybe we want to make one.
We will.
Yeah.
Today is the introduction to the fact that Chad will be adding probably by the end of the show, we'll have a Streamweaver channel. Yeah, go ahead.
Got it. You can also reach out in Liminal Power Users Slack, and you can get we can have community conversations about it there. You can see shows that use it and so on. Now, to your question about building locally and then installing remotely. So these looks we created locally. So Jonathan came over to my house last night and we're like, okay, where do we want to put these lights? And I pulled up a local board and we got it all figured out. And the beauty of this is that Streamweaver isn't a protocol, right? It isn't like, it's not an interface you have to talk to or remap to or anything like that. It's just transporting the local data to make it think it's local, right? So all we had to do is just copy that file. Jonathan takes it home, and then we just both run Streamweaver, and the lights don't know any better, and the board doesn't know any better. So there really is no remapping required when you do have the option to do something where you build it locally and send it out. For example, if you're a theater, you probably have a standard patch, right? It explains, where all your lights are and how they're mapped, and maybe you have some preset files. We were doing some experiments with Andrew. We couldn't get it working because we couldn't figure out how to communicate with the nodes at the venue, but Tlaloc was able to create and design a show plot, and then he was going to have that execute on the Nomad software and just talk that into the board and basically take the place of the Grand MA that's inside of Andrew's theater. So we could have done some pretty cool stuff there. So yeah, it just depends on your workflow, but that's part of the beauty of it, is that it's none the wiser that it's over WAN versus over LAN. And there's no real translation of the protocol. It's just getting wrapped in SRT so that it can be sort of safely carried from A to B.
Next question.
Thomas Bauer, Atlanta, says, what happens with a WAN outage or a WAN IP chain? Does it gracefully handle the reconnect once you have the wide area network connection again?
So what will happen is we'll go into a reconnect loop. And so we'll ping every, half a second or something like that to try to reestablish connection. There are these pause and replay buttons at the bottom of your Streamweaver stream. So you can select the stream that's problematic and you can try to jolt it again, though, if for some reason it's not automatically grabbing. Reason for that is that depending on the outage, like for example, we've had this problem before, but residential network, power goes out, power comes back on, new IPs get issued for public IP addresses to the routers. So Streamweaver won't know how to reconnect, but you just go edit stream, put in the new IP, you look at Streamweaver, hit refresh my address, and it'll automatically figure out, okay, what changed? And how do I have to change our protocols to do that? You just refresh it, pause play, and you're back. So it can be good recovery systems are in place, but there's always a little bit of tuning based on what the problem is.
Next question.
Andy Kuckendorfer in Viera, Florida, who's been streaming for 20 years, he says, will Streamweaver allow for the remote control of a Tricaster or Vmix?
So yes, and it just depends on how you want to do it. So let's say you are running either the BitFocus Companion or Universe Show Control to communicate with your Vmix or your Tricaster instance. Those have a relationship through web requests, which is not a data stream that Streamweaver can transport because it's a web request. It's not it's talking to servers locally inside of things and all that. So what you would do is I would deploy the combination of Companion or your Universe Control on the same network as your Vmix or your Tricaster box. Those programs have OSC APIs. So you could then have a second BitFocus Companion or a second instance of your Universe. And what you're really doing is Universe to Universe or Companion to Universe or Companion to Companion communication. And then you're just triggering actions that then dump into Vmix. So again, you're just picking up what we would call this a mezzanine program, something you pick up in between that does the translation to the protocol that isn't supported. Like again, a DMX cable, like this exact electrical signal I can't send over WAN, right? But I can wrap it in a network protocol, or I can have it communicate with something that can communicate at the network protocol. And honestly, the time we see this most often is with Visca. Visca sometimes is on a serial mode versus an IP mode. And so you might want to just have a remote control to trigger a recall or something like that that's sitting there locally. So you can just...
And for most people listening, if you don't know what Visca is, it's typically a camera control protocol, for PTZs and such.
And I can show a demo of Visca, getting some Visca camera control. The client, I just don't want to show in public, but we can do it in the post-show. Let me take a look at it.
Very good. Next question.
Roscoe Jones here in the panel most days. Are there products that speak OSC that theater is adopting? Budgets are very tight with no ticket revenue. Do you see remote control becoming a standard after COVID? And if so, why?
So it's already the standard. OSC is the standard for remote controlling consoles and software programs and light boards and soundboards and media servers and all that stuff that exists in the theater space. What we are hoping will become the norm is that we won't have fear about having guest amazing lighting designer call into my university and control my light plot grid directly, right? They can stay at home. They can, do 15 of these a day and just go around the country touring at all these different lighting facilities and showing students how to design stuff right on their boards and in their hardware, just by putting Streamweaver in between, right? So that's what we're trying to do here. But remote control in the world of theater is actually already a precedent. And it's becoming even more so of a precedent. I was telling the guys on Zoom Test Kitchen yesterday that my only professional billing in theater actually is as a stage manager. All of my tech stuff was done at the community and academic level. My only professional billing is stage management. So for me, show calling is kind of is super critical. And that's where like my style of remote controlling and in how I call shows, like if I'm going back and forth with the director and we can't get the timing right on something, I'm gonna say, okay, stop. We're gonna have this cue control this cue here, and we're gonna program in the timing so we get that right. I'll have intuition on when we start the sequence of things, but if the song is not changing, right? This is a playback track. It's always going to be this length. We're going to use timecode, or we're going to use OSC. We're going to use whatever we got to do to get the communication going there. And I've seen a lot of professional high-end theaters moving in that direction. And now I hope that we can do the same type of thing, but decentralized.
And I think that just one thing I want to underline there that Andy kind of stated over, it's already a standard and people are already doing it. And to Roscoe's question, this is one of the reasons that I think things like office hours is really important, is that we're moving into a world where we are not geographically constrained on who we hire. And now I've been in that world for 20 years, and I can tell you that I hire the right people for everything, regardless of where they are in the world, because, I just know how to transfer all that stuff. And we've done that for a long time. The one place we were a little nailed down was in the physical world, where if we did a live production, I had to find a TD and a camera operator and all these, and everything else in New York or in, wherever we were doing these. That's going away. Especially for a live stream, if I lose the internet connection, well, I don't have a show anyway. So I think that for theater, it's really important that all of us keep on remembering that we can. The great news is that we can work from wherever, and actually be part of any production. The bad news for folks that are not working on their skill set every single day is that people can hire people from anywhere, and so it's not going to be. You need to keep on improving your skill set and improving your network, which is what we hope to do here. Next question.
Michael Sweeney out of Chicago says, can you use dedicated apps for a specific device, X32 edit or mixing station for the X32? Or do you have to nap to just a MIDI controller?
Probably map, just mapping to it. Yeah.
Map.
So if it talks UDP, it can talk through Streamweaver. So if that is a piece of software that is designed to remote control your X32 and it does a UDP, unicast or multicast stream to get out to the board, under the hood it's probably just translating UI interactions into OSC, because why would you build the whole OSC API and then not use it when you need to make control software? But again, manufacturers are weird sometimes. But assuming that that's the case and that there is a UDP connection between your software or your hardware, or that you have hardware that you can map to a UDP protocol like MIDI controllers, then it will communicate. So there's no restriction in place by Streamweaver about what data you can and can't transport. It's not optimized for things like video and audio transmission, like the actual, I wouldn't go take Voice Meter Banana and go pass through its UDP outputs through it. You could try that, and we could talk about how to set the settings and maybe get that to work. It's not necessarily in its current form designed to be an AV transportation system. It's a show control system. So with that one restraint in place, anything UDP related, you should be able to move.
Next question.
Victor in the panel is up next with, can you save profiles in settings?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we can create a bunch of streams, and then we can save them to a .wvr file, and then that goes out on disk. So what we can do is we can preset our Streamweavers for the talent, send them, get them installed, and then send them the .wvr files, load them in. All the streams are pre-configured, IPs and everything are all sorted. Profiles will load back in. The interface gets set for a different mode. So that's also helpful when you've got kind of when you're in my situation where you're trying to control a bunch of different things at once and you're doing different shows during a day, and I don't want to go through and delete the old streams and load up the new ones. I just clear them out, load up the WVR file, preset the interface, roll on to the next show. So
good. Victor.
Just wanted to clarify that one part of the heavy lifting that I did have to do is, get the Behringer X32 OSC command set. There's a wiki out there that has them all. You have to learn those commands. And I had to do that for QLab, both on the ATEM and the X32. But once you have those, now you're able to, build that combination from the controller, MIDI controller, into my network and call up those commands within my network.
And that's pretty cool too, because when Victor and I set up this demo, what we did is we had Victor try it locally, make sure we got the syntax right, make sure we got it looking and working and feeling the way we wanted it to work. And then we said, okay, now I'll just copy your command and I'll do it. And we'll put Streamweaver in the middle. And they're also not mutually exclusive. So we can have Victor controlling some things and me controlling other things. Or, if Victor still wants to create a QLab file that moves him to different parts of the show, but then we just want to have, granular adjustment within those moves, we can use the two together as well. So it's not like you have to be just remote or just internal. You can combine them.
Next question.
Liberty White, who is gracing us with her presence in the panel today from Atlanta, Georgia. How many people can control this? Could someone be on lights, someone else on audio, and so forth?
Yeah, and that's the theatrical model. So we've got sound operator we did some crazy stuff. We had a soundboard op, had a MIDI control surface. Actually, they had a full board, and it was mapped to MIDI and then out to OSC. What was actually happening is it was communicating to OBS WebSockets through Streamweaver to control the actor mics inside of OBS Ninja. So they had this whole big board, but it was actually just going down to do digital mixing inside of OBS, which was a lot of fun. At the same time, the lighting designer in New York was going out and doing the different lighting controls, and so you had St. Louis and that, and then you had fixtures that were in South Korea and Italy, and both coasts of the United States, and up in Canada as well. So you can totally split it up, and there's no limit to the number of streams you can create inside of the app. So
and this control data is so tiny that, compared to what we're used to, that it's because you're probably taking a lot of communication to get over a megasecond, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely, and that's where and it's a double-edged sword, because that's part of the problem, is that most VPNs are going to be optimized for the heavy stuff, and they're going to do so at the expense of the small stuff. So an OSC trigger packet is so small that it might just be noise, and it might just disappear in the VPN, and that's why this app exists, is because it ensures the delivery of whatever that data is.
Next question.
Sherman Patton of Salt Lake City, Utah says, is the latency set the same as most SRT at 2.5 times the RTT?
So we actually, it's funny you say that. So when you select the profiles, we have sort of cached up some known working issues where, like, if you know that, like, hey, this protocol is going to have a really high data rate but really small packet size, when you select that profile from the list, we just go ahead and optimize for that, or we optimize for really tiny things. So it's not always set that way. When you go to generic, it is. We take our hands off of it. But we're considering in the future exposing all of the different SRT controls if you really want to dial something custom in. Again, so SRT has a reputation for being super latent and things like that. That is true when it's transporting MTEG TS. That is not necessarily the case when you're sending arbitrary data through it. And that was the big connection I had to make, is that everything I knew about SRT was wrong. I knew it about SRT MPEG TS. I did not know SRT in a generic sense. And I think that's the misconception that I hope as a group we can start to expand the possibilities of these things and say, wait a second, are we thinking about transporting video, or are we thinking about this communication protocol in general? Because really SRT is just the best parts of UDP and the best parts of TCP sort of jammed together to make it work. And that's what's special about it. So we don't currently give you explicit setting, but if you go to the back end, you can set it there through the CLI that we offer for Streamweaver, or you can pull from profiles. But that's a long story. But yes, the answer is we can set it, but we typically don't have to.
Next question
comes from Mickey, our friend in the Philippines, who says, are you able to enter a domain name from a dynamic DNS provider as opposed to an external IP address to get around the non-static external IP issue?
Just as long as the handshake can take place, I think we'll be okay. The app will allow you to type whatever you want into that, and it'll make its best attempt at whatever you provide. So if that is lexicographic, or it'll try, but what we sometimes see is that the dynamic DNS providers have other things going on as consequences of what they're trying to set up that make it in the way. But it's worth a shot. It's definitely, you're able to try it.
Next question
comes from Beju in India. What's the timeline for Streamweaver Pro with the integrated video transport, and could that send video both ways?
So I had an epiphany. So I started this project working on Streamweaver Pro, realized Streamweaver Lite was possible, released Streamweaver Lite, and sat on the Pro. So as you guys know, we created a core that translates freely between SRT and NDI, and those modules were built inside of FFmpeg. So it allowed us to go between. It was my summer project last summer. Basically, we went through and we just designed all this stuff to try to get ready for this. And what I sort of decided on was that the advantage was not what I was hoping for remote contribution, because Zoom sort of won, and in a sense that, like, Zoom just won that one. You can go in there, you can get high quality video, you can get low latency transmission, they can be conversational, you can do mix minus and hardware, and talent call in via SRT became something that I was no longer certain was needed in the market. So what I did is I started optimizing for situations where you would use an encoder for SRT and just needed something that was highly flexible. So Streamweaver Pro is sort of still sitting on my workbench as something that I'm playing around with concepts and learning about video and what to pump through it and how to optimize it. My answer to this really is that's what Zoom ISO is going to be. In terms of our product stack, we took Streamweaver Pro out and Zoom ISO came right in, because with Zoom ISO I can get as presently an unknown number of 1080p feeds. I had over 8 yesterday coming out of a deck link, right, or coming out as NDI from a single instance of the app, and that to me is a more disruptive app for remote contribution than something that's SRT based.
I mean, and the thing we look at with quality at this point with Zoom, if you gave Zoom the same latency as SRT, you could push HDR. Because it's doing 1080p at such a low latency. Next question.
Thomas Bauer of Atlanta, Georgia says, does it handle clamping MTU 1300 instead of standard 1500 on a wide area network?
I've never tested that. I would love to know. So yeah, give it a shot and let me know.
You guys talk. And then we'll come back. Yeah. Next question.
Eddie Martinez of Palo Cedro says, how does licensing work? How many streams can be set up per license, and how many devices controlled?
Okay, so the business end of the spear. So it's $89 per endpoint. That is a perpetual license, and it has unlimited number of streams. It may not stay that way. So
buy now.
You've been told.
Grandfather yourself in.
Yeah, it will not get cheaper from here.
And so if you had, in that case, it would be if you had 2 endpoints. If you controlling Victor would require 2 endpoints, right?
Yes. So practically we allow you to buy them individually in case you need like 2 and then you want to move to 3, but your buy-in is going to be 2 endpoints.
Right. And if you were controlling 2 different locations, you would have yours plus the 2 end locations. You wouldn't need other instances on yours, right?
That's right. So it's only 1 per network. So because of the forwarding. Now, sometimes you can get into a weird situation where like you want to be forwarding in a certain way to a certain subnet. It's just easier to throw 2 endpoints out there. So asterisks on that, but typically speaking, it's 1 endpoint per network.
Next question.
Victor is back from Brookings, South Dakota with, how much is the software and does each operator need to buy a license? Well, we're kind of right there. So we're moving to our last question in the general queue from Thomas Bauer in Atlanta. Can you select the protocol for encapsulated traffic as TCP or UDP?
So typically speaking, what we will do if you have a TCP data stream is we'll add an app out front that will convert it to UDP and then send it into Streamweaver. Because the SRT protocol, its wrapper encoders and all of that is not designed to ingest TCP, because that's sort of it vies against if you look at the open source, you can see it kind of vies against the way that it's trying to do stream encoding. So we typically will try to pump it out. Now we're thinking about just taking the open source projects that convert TCP to UDP and just moving them inside of Streamweaver so that you have TCP support internally. We just haven't gotten around to it yet. Zoom keeps me busy. So
what's next?
What's next? Oh, question wise, or just in general?
What's next? Like, do you have anything that you're seeing off in the distance that you're willing to talk about, like that's exciting you as far as this process?
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing that's super exciting for me is for you all to be aware of this now, because we've done this app really, like we've committed it to the arts for so long, and because they are like, again, I'll say this, that like the crew of Office Hours would be wise to look to the theater community as much as possible. They do some things that are kind of jank and weird that we would never do in production environments, but boy, do they try a lot of stuff out. I mean, they were figuring out stuff in Zoom in, the first day of the pandemic because rehearsal was done and they couldn't, so they're a good group to look at with their show control stuff, and they've done some pretty amazing stuff. So I'm personally excited to see how crews operate in a decentralized way for live production and what type of gear we get to communicate with each other. It always thrills me when I see an example of like, oh wait, I can send motion capture data through this to Unreal Engine from this Rococo suit, and I can have a dancer now in one side of the world sending to generative projection, particle effects in a theater in another side of the world, and have a bunch of dancers out there collaborating in a space where they can't physically be together, but their sort of performative essence, if you will, is sort of interacting in it. So that stuff blows my mind and it makes me really excited. The other thing I'm excited about is integrating Streamweaver into other applications. So media servers have approached us with interest in having their data transmission negotiated between endpoints so they can pair up and have different designers working on different parts of a collaborative project. Jonathan, maybe you have some thoughts as well.
Go, Jonathan.
Yeah, certainly. And we definitely want to hear back sort of feedback from you guys on what kind of features and what kind of protocols you want us to really strive on supporting, testing, and demonstrating. We're currently doing a lot of research and development, acquiring some hardware and doing some specific tests, specifically with Blackmagic cameras to see if we can try to get tight control of those. We're also interested in some user interface and some user experience improvements.
Here's my prototype board.
Exactly.
We're working on it.
Two improvements that come to mind is the idea of like deep linking being able to send somebody a specific, just a single copy and pasted URL. When they open that up, it'll immediately create a stream in their Streamweaver with all the settings pre-configured. And another similar concept would be to have a server that handles the processing and can give you just a generated code of a couple characters, and that code allows you to connect without having to worry about IPs, without having to worry about any of that on the talent end. So those are the kind of experience things we're considering implementing. And if there's enough popularity and enough interest, definitely let us know what you guys think.
And the talent kits as well. I think that's going to be
Right.
a huge one. Like I think about how you guys are running Matt in the kitchen and things like that, and I can see just a lot of places where we could slot that in, and we could have lighting control of this, and we can hand that to somebody here. Or we don't have to know who the operator is ahead of time, or things like that. So I'm trying to go after everywhere we're using a VPN inside of production, because it really isn't needed for a lot of this stuff.
That's great, Victor.
Can you talk, Andy, a little bit about the integration with Isadora and this product, and specifically the ability in Isadora to be able to make a graphical user interface that would be custom to an operator type?
Exactly. So with programs like Universe and Isadora, you can draw up a UI that you can lock, the back end with a password or whatever like that. You can get rid of all the other programming and glyphs and scene numbers and all that stuff. You can tear that all down, and Isadora can literally get down to a gray box. And then you can just put whatever buttons and sliders and knobs and information and pictures you want. So for Victor, in your case, what I would suggest we do is we build a Sax Jam controller that has your A10 presets with little pictures of what they look like on pressable buttons, right? And then we have your faders underneath them, so that if somebody doesn't have a MIDI controller, they can click and drag. Then you can see feedback if they connect a MIDI device there. And that is just sort of the transferable interface. It's free to use because Isadora is only licensed when you edit it. So you can hand it out to as many people as you want, as many different operators and team members as needed. And then in the back end, it's just turning those UI interactions into OSC and talking to Streamweaver locally. We come up with some port scheme, and then we're good to go at that point. So Isadora and Streamweaver together, I mean, the marketing speech, it's a match made in heaven, right? Like it's the kind of thing where we want to just get that really tight and get that working as well. And we're working very closely with Tricatronics as well to see, is there a way to get even deeper than having two apps? So we're looking at that now too.
Nice. Andy and Jonathan, thank you so much for coming and joining us and being part of the discussion. It's really, really great to have you here. Super impressive. Super impressive. I just think you guys are onto something.
No, thank you so much. It was really, really a pleasure to be here, and thanks for letting us showcase our app.
Yeah, and if and we will make sure that if it hasn't already been done, we'll get Streamweaver into our Discord and make sure that it's fully supported. And you'll see us experimenting with it a lot. I wanted to bring Andy and Jonathan on for this show so that we can kind of introduce everybody, but you're going to see us experimenting with it a lot. I'm trying to figure a lot of this stuff out. Once I really realized what Streamweaver did, even before I've used it, I was like, oh, we'll just have Streamweaver do that. Like we're just going to have that, like it's already working in my head, and now I have to actually tie that to the ground. So you'll see us doing that over the next month or two. Go ahead, Victor.
Once we figure it out with TJ, Andy, and I figure out the thing, then we'll be happy to show, how we did it, and then actually maybe even do a Zoom call while I'm doing the show, so people can do it behind the scenes, just like you're doing in the kitchen. Yeah,
and we can do a second hour on it. Like once you've done one, I'd love to get a second hour that we just create that is a Monday or a Friday after when you did it, maybe a Friday after you did it, so you have a little time to prep it. And then, so just let me know when that is, and we'll talk about it, good, bad, and ugly. Like if some things worked, some things didn't. Here we all know that we're throwing stuff up against the wall and figuring it out. So, all right. Thanks, producers. Great job. Lots of great questions. Good conversation, both in the first and second hour. And the panelists, thanks. Thanks for coming in and answering those questions and creating yet another great conversation. Again, 401, 402, something like that we've done it straight. It seems to get better every day. All right, we're going to jump into the post show. We'll see a lot of you. Please get ready. Go to sleep early today because tomorrow is the long day. So be prepared for that. All right, see you in the post show.